And now, in studio, bringing his Midwest values from the Show Me State to the land of San Diego. He's a triple threat, licensed as an attorney, mortgage broker, and a top producing realtor who's crushing the competition. Here to deliver you what's happening in the trenches of the market. Your host, Michael Gaddis.
Welcome to the Michael Gaddis Show on AM 1170, The Answer. I am your host, Michael Gaddis of michaelgaddis.com and frontierloangroup.com. And I am here every Monday night at 7 p.m. to talk about anything and everything related to real estate. If you need more information about me or would like more information, you can go to my websites, as I mentioned, which are michaelgaddis.com and frontierloangroup.com. You can also go to my Facebook page, which is basically Frontier Loan Group Facebook, or you can just give me a call, and you can reach me at area code 760-692-5950, 760-692-5950. So today I want to start off with my favorite topic, reverse mortgages. And this last week I've been going to a lot of different expos, golden expos, senior aging events. I've had my own workshops, and it's been quite an interesting couple of weeks because I've encountered quite a few seniors, and some of the stories I hear are just, they're just really eye-opening. There's a guy who lives in San Bernardino I've been speaking to, and when I first encountered him, he told me that he was working with a company out of Connecticut on a reverse mortgage. So when I first met him, I said, that's fine. I said, I hope everything goes well. I said, if you want me to review your paperwork, I'd be glad to do it. Just take a look at your proposal, make sure that you're getting the right program. Because I told him, I said, look, every one of my clients knows exactly, one, why they're getting a reverse mortgage. Number two, they know exactly what program they're getting into and why they're choosing it. And number three, they know exactly why they're getting the interest rate that they do. So I asked him, I said, well, what program is he putting you into? He says, well, I'm not sure. And I said, well, what interest rate are you getting? He's like, I'm not really sure about that either. So after talking to him a little bit, he engaged me enough that he was willing to have me look at some of his paperwork. So a week went by, and then he called me, and he says, I'm getting a little bit concerned because the guy that I'm working with in Connecticut hasn't returned my phone calls. And I said, really? I said, I wonder why that is. He said, well, let me tell you how bad it is. I've called this guy 30 times in the month of September. 30 times. He has returned 3 of my calls. 3 out of 30. And he says, and none of them recently. And I said, I wonder what the deal is. He says, well, the last call that I got from him, he said, was to tell me that the appraisal had been done, and the appraisal came in at $250,000. And he says, but after that, I've been unable to get a hold of him at all. And he goes, and as I mentioned, in September I called him 30, and he goes, I probably called him almost that much now in the month of October because I want to know what's going on. So I said, I tell you what, I'm going to be going to Victorville, I think it was last Thursday. I said, I'll stop by your house if you don't mind on my way back from Victorville. So he said, okay. So I stopped by his house, and he shows me the paperwork, and he shows me the application that he put in the beginning, and I started seeing some of the issues that he was going to have. One of the things is that he's got going on is he's got a non-borrowing spouse, which means that his wife is under the age of 62. So that's one issue he has, and what that means is that for qualification, they're going to use her age factor, which is much lower than what his was. Number two, I noticed that on his credit report that they had in his 1009 application that they didn't have payments on a lot of his debts. So I asked him about that. He says, oh, I'm not paying my credit card payments. I'm like, really? He goes, yeah, I had open heart surgery about a year ago, and he goes, before that I had all these credit cards, and I just didn't feel well for about 6 to 8 months before my open heart surgery. He said, but, so I quit one of my jobs. Then I was forced to retire, and then I had surgery, And he said, and I haven't been able to work since, so I haven't made any payments. So I was a little bit concerned about that. And then I looked through and I noticed that the person who had given him the proposal had, number one, put him into the fixed program, and number two, had used a value of 260. And he was telling me that the guy was telling that after he paid off his mortgage, the guy was gonna give him like $3,200 or something like that. Well, when I ran the numbers, I knew immediately why the guy probably wasn't calling him back. The number one reason he wasn't calling him back was because when you put in the $250 loan amount for the program that he had, he was not going to get $3,200 cash. He was going to have to come in with like $1,500. So it was like almost a $5,000 swing from what he had quoted the guy. So I have a feeling that he didn't want to have to break that news to him, so he was kind of avoiding his phone calls. So that's the number one thing. Number two is because of those credit card issues. Reverse mortgages do allow for extenuating circumstances. So, but aside from those credit card issues, he would have to go through an extensive financial assessment review, and there was the potential that the lender was going to require a LISA if you didn't properly document and explain his extenuating circumstances. So, in other words, his file was not a cookie cutter file. It was not the way that this guy had kind of thought it up. And so my point to this, telling you this story, is when you or a loved one or someone you know is getting a reverse mortgage, it behooves you to probably find someone that you are able to talk to locally rather than work with somebody on the other side of the country. Because, it's amazing to me that this guy even went through the process initially, because the paperwork you have to sign initially, the initial application and all the initial disclosures, it's a pretty lengthy product. It takes me I would say about an hour and a half to 2 hours to go through it with my clients. So we go page by page, I explain what's on there, they ask me questions. It takes me an hour and a half to 2 hours to do that. When you do it with somebody obviously not local, they're just going to send you a package with a bunch of little marks on it where you're supposed to sign. And I can't imagine getting that intimidating, that large amount of legal documents, and just signing my signature without having questions or going through it. It just seems like a very intimidating process, but that's what he did. You're listening to the Michael Gaddis Show on AM 1170 The Answer. I am your host, Michael Gaddis of FrontierLoanGroup.com, and we're talking about shopping for a reverse mortgage. And my advice is use someone local. Now, let me give you an example. What I mean by local. What I mean by local is not somebody in the same city or necessarily even in the same general area. What I'm talking about is somebody local that if you had to jump in a car and you had to go to somebody's office, you can do that. So like with my clients, I help people in Santa Barbara, Ventura. I handle people in, obviously I just mentioned Victorville. I've gone to Barstow. Within a certain radius, I will actually go out, visit people, talk to them, go through the whole process, in person. I don't necessarily just send giant packets of information and just require people to do it. On occasion, I can do that if somebody doesn't necessarily want me to come out, and then I could talk them through the process. But it's one of those things where I like my clients to know exactly what they're doing and why they're doing it. And when you have clients like the one that I was telling you, where he seems lost now because he's really depending on this reverse mortgage, and after reviewing his financials, he really needs it. And so after seeing him struggle, and all of a sudden now the guy's gone, his guy is just non-responsive to him, and he's flustered, he's frustrated, he doesn't know what to do. He was really counting on this. And as I told him, I said, look, the guy should have at least had the decency to call you up and say, you know what, your appraisal came in lower than what I thought it was going to. We were banking on 260, we got 250, it affected the numbers. And now we're not going to be able to give you cash back. In fact, go to get a reverse mortgage, you're going to have to bring some money in his situation, which wasn't, by the way, true if he switched programs on him. He was putting him in the fixed program, which he shouldn't have put him in. We put him in the yearly adjustable, and in fact, after doing the numbers with him, instead of him having to bring in like $1,500, I was actually getting him $7,000 cash back. So I was being able to do it, but only by switching the program around and giving him credits and doing some numbers. So that's the way that works. But I still have the problem of his financial assessment review. He still has those credit cards, and we're in the process now of gathering all of our documentation, because the one thing about reverse mortgages are, even though they have a financial assessment, it is a subjective review. And what I mean is they will look at your personal set of circumstances and not necessarily just at your FICO score or your credit report and say, oh, you're out. They will look and they'll ask why. Like, what happened? Why did you go late on these credit cards? In his instance, the answer is because he had open heart surgery. And in fact, he even told me that he has a pig valve in his heart now, which I thought was interesting. But so he actually, and he showed me the scar to prove it. He said, if you don't believe me, and he pulled up his shirt and showed me his scar. And I said, no, I believed you before you did that. Now I really believe you. But, you know, so I mean, he's very sincere about it. But, you know, there's a way to do it. Everybody's like a puzzle and everybody's different. So just to summarize what we talked about here, just when you shop for a reverse mortgage, my suggestion is to use somebody closer to you. Doesn't have to be in the same town, even in the same general area, but if you need to hop in a car and see what's going on, you need to be able to do that if you had to. Connecticut's a long drive. So anyway, after the break, we're going to talk a little bit more about reverse mortgages. You're listening to the Michael Gaddis Show on AM 1170, The Answer.